Part 2. The Universe. Section 2.1. The Beginning. Note. At the time of writing NicA modern human civilization has not yet invented terms and concepts that make it possible to extremely accurately describe the processes of the absolute beginning. Therefore, for its descriptions, we will use human imaginative figurative analogies. Block 2.1,1. So, everything should come from somewhere. But in the beginning, there should have been nothing. Neither matter, nor energy, nor space, nor time, nor any spirit and being in general. In philosophy, such an absence of anything at all is defined as nothing. So, to the question of what was at the beginning, we can say, at the beginning there was nothing. But this, nothing, was. So, there was nothing. How long was nothing? Where? When? You can't say, because there was neither time, nor space, nor any characteristics and comparisons. Therefore, with the same reason, we can say that nothing lasted 1 instant, or that nothing lasted endless billions of years. This does not change the essence. In the beginning there was nothing. But then, somewhere, once, in some moment, this nothing, or its some part, realized itself, realized that it is nothing. In an infinite number of possibilities, it did not realize, and in one case, realized. And why not? And what prevented? Truly, nothing helped, also. So we say that, in one of the cases. Moreover, nothing, as it was nothing equals zero, remained nothing equals zero. So, from the point of view of mathematics, everything is in order. And it realized itself, figuratively speaking, gradually, over many conditional non-existent billions of conditional non-existent years, at an infinitely small, indistinguishable from zero, conditionally non-existent point. So, we have not yet come out of zero, and did not violate the laws of the universe. Moreover, there were no laws either. Absolutely. But there is another thing. It turns out that zeros could be not identical. Nothing equals zero was manifested, and turned into something equals zero. Still zero, but self-aware. After all, when nothing realized itself, that it is nothing, it felt something, so to speak, changed its status. From nothing, without suspecting it, it turned into something. Because, when you feel something, you make, even a small, but work. And during the smallest work, even the smallest energy is either released or absorbed. In this case, there is nothing to absorb energy from, because of its complete absence, so, it remains only, to release the energy. Well, the fact that feeling is the basis of our habitual energies, was discussed in the first part of the book. When nothing turned into something, it turned, according to our concepts, into the original spirit, or rather, for now, into its embryo. And also we received unconditional confirmation, that the spirit creates energy, and that the mother of any energy, is a feeling. For the simple reason, that in the beginning, there was nobody to create and nothing to create of. Block 2.1,2. So, it happened. The embryo of the spirit, equals the embryo of the universe, equals the embryo of being. It was alive. It felt. It realized itself. The embryo grew stronger, evolved. Together with it, information appeared and increased. The primordial spirit became the primary carrier of this information. The primary original feelings of the primordial embryo of the spirit increased and decreased. Weak tender original feelings, appeared and disappeared, replaced each other. But a change of feelings, is an event. So a sequential series of events has appeared. It consisted of a primary sequential series of primary change of actions, this would be a conditionally external row, and a primary sequential series of a primary change of primary feelings, this would be a conditionally internal row. That is, 2 oscillatory series appeared on the primary carrier wave of the development of the primordial spirit. And it became possible to compare these series by the ratio of the number of actions to the number of feelings, on a conditionally taken segment of the primary CW of the development of the primordial spirit. And these are, the embryos of time and its perception. The time arose in being. Together with feelings, energy appeared and grew, because energy is feelings. A new work was being done. And so the total power was growing. While developing, the primordial spirit behaved like a child. Well, how else could it behave? The primordial spirit in its infancy, probably, tried to move. For the development, it is natural. But there was nowhere to move, because there was no space. Perhaps it tried to increase, grow, decrease. But there was nothing to compare with either, and nothing was clear. Finally, it wanted to communicate. But there was no one to communicate either, because there was nothing around. Finally, it got tired of loneliness. Section 2.2. First Division. Block 2.2,1. Well, what do the kids do, when they are bored, when they want to play, and there is no one around? They come up with an interlocutor, imagine it. And the whole game, all the dialogues, they lead for two, as if bifurcated into two different personalities, remaining a single and indivisible baby. So, our baby, equals the primordial spirit, as if, divided into two. Why as if? Because it is practically impossible to separate completely. Not then, not now. Because, if you make an absolutely complete separation, without leaving a single common connection, equals yarn, not a single chain of feelings, not a single chain of general inseparable information, not the slightest inextricable spiritual and spatial connection, then, between halves separated in such an absolute way, there will be nothing. No communication, no memory, no information, no space, no direction. Nothing. With an absolutely complete separation, we get two completely different worlds, equals universes, equals beings, absolutely not in contact and know absolutely nothing about each other. Therefore, our baby, equals the primordial spirit was divided, but remaining at the same time, the one primordial spirit. Block 2.2,2. And any division, first of all, provides for a distinction between the different halves, or at least the boundaries between these halves. Of course, the primordial spirit could delimit itself by two parallel lines, maybe at the beginning, this even happened, but the modern world suggests that the division followed the path of spheres and figures of complex closed forms and volumes. So, figuratively speaking, the division of the primordial spirit into himself and his interlocutor requires an outline equals designation of himself and himself as his interlocutor. And what to outline equals designate? After all, there is nothing around. And nothing else. And since there was nothing more, so nothing was outlined. And now this outlined equals designated nothing, automatically turned into something, in this case, into space, in which it was already possible to outline equals to indicate different volumes of different parts of the original spirit. So, we conclude. The designated nothing is, the space. Space is designated and controlled by the spirit and saturated with its senses energies. Otherwise, how to control? Therefore, it, the space, is no longer nothing, but something, that is, it is a part of being. Block 2.2,3. Now, when space appeared, the outlined, equals designated halves of the primordial spirit were able not only to contact each other, but also to move relative to each other. Approach, move away, change places, change the shape of its own volume. And all this, at own will. Appeared a primary concept of movement, distance, size, speed, shape, difference. Meetings, partings, etc. became possible. The flow and accumulation of information increased. The first symbols of communication appeared. In a successive series of events, the past and the present appeared, and in desires, the future began to be seen. The feelings' energies and their continuous flow and chain of interconversions, the interchange of one feeling energy with another, grew and diversified. Life, equals world, equals being, evolved, and from nothing they were already separated by infinity, which grew and became stronger. Section 2.3. The second division, the path to infinity. Block 2.3,1. But the really rapid development of the universe began after the second division of the primordial spirit into its component parts. Skeptics may ask, why did it need this? We'll answer, fortunately, primordial spirit was not an old skeptic, but was an inquisitive and active child. And fortunately, it still kept these qualities because activity and curiosity are qualities of a fulfilling life. The main thing is, in what direction to drive them. So, the second division of the primordial spirit took place. We remind you, partial, not final, not absolute division, with the preservation of some definite connections between all the divided parts. After this second division, the concept of a multitude arose. And the multitude is the path to infinity. The concepts of majority and minority have appeared. That is, there was a prerequisite and the need to create an account, and a language of communication and information transfer. That is, the primary symbols of communication appeared and developed, let's call them PRISMC. The space had strengthened and expanded, the emptiness, from our point of view, but the emptiness designated, controlled, and saturated by the primordial spirit, its primary feeling energy, serving, at least, as a connection between all the various divided parts of the primordial spirit, and the field of their joint activity. And the more these independent newly formed equals newborn spirits became, the more powerful they became, and they became as more powerful, as more senses energies they emitted or accumulated, the more space was required. And the space was designated equals increased more and more. By the way, even today, scientists are confidently observing the expansion of the universe. So, everything is correct. Block 2.3,2. In the process of communication games of newborn spirits, the concepts of rapprochement and unification into groups, divergence and separation, creation of configurations and similar things appeared and have become stronger. And all this was done through desire or unwillingness, through feelings and through striving or not striving, for something equals someone. And of course, all this was achieved with self-limiting oneself in space, which allowed each newborn spirit to individualize itself and distinguish itself from other newborn spirits, being at the same time an inseparable part of the one primordial spirit. And there is no need to think and argue for a long time, is this true, or not? Was it like this, or somehow else? True. For the simple reason that, except for the above, there was nothing else in the nascent world. There were no orthodox scientist materialists, no orthodox clergymen, no matter, no religion. There were no physical, chemical, and social laws known to us either. Separating equals individualizing itself from others, the newborn spirit performed cyclical oscillatory actions. And only that which the spirit created equals produced equals generated could fluctuate cyclically, that is, all its component parts and filling, its feelings, desires and aspirations, in all their power and all their spectral equals percentage quantitative component. And the difference in the spectra had to be mandatory. Because if everything is 100% the same, then there is no difference and no individualization. And if there is absolutely no difference between the two parts of the one primordial spirit, then for the primordial spirit it is one part, except that it has become more powerful. Actually, in the power of the primordial spirit was to push these 100% identical halves in the space, created and controlled by it, and keep them at a distance from each other. It is possible. This requires its will energy. But the difference in spatial coordinates is already a difference. Therefore, 100% similarity is not possible anymore. But the difference in coordinates is a concept. And if only the primordial spirit turns off this will energy concept, both objects will certainly merge into one. Who and what can distinguish them? And especially in those times, when there were no laws. That is why the need for individualization and stabilization of qualities, and the creation of laws of interaction, life, development, had risen. That is, there was a need to create the laws of being. Block 2.3,3. In those days, there were no automats factories yet. And the only creator of everything was the spirit. Well, since, by that time, there were already a lot of spirits, then the quality of everything created by them certainly depended on the qualities of the creator spirits themselves and the qualities of the one primordial spirit, acting, in this case, the main creator, architect, coordinator, controller, and most importantly, the keeper of all being and its laws, arising as needed. The one primordial spirit was forced to do this in any case, again, for the simple reason, that there were simply no other applicants for this post. Block 2.3,4. So, for any creation, you need an energy. We have an energy, these are senses allocated equals formed by the spirit. But just senses energies, are just senses energies. And for normal productive creativity, besides the senses energies, some additional components are needed. Let's call them, qualities of the spirit. The qualities of the spirit are the following. The desire, is a path and a goal. The unwillingness, is the rejection of a certain path and goal. The aspiration, is any change along the path of desire or unwillingness. That is, striving is also a vector equals direction of applying of the force, or forces, including creative and others. The will is a stability. Any stability, including the stability of any process and the stability of any changes, in spite of any opposition. The faith is consent, non-resistance, adoption of processes, laws, methods, goals, theories, ideas, plans, programs, teachings, and absolutely confident, 100%, expectation, that it will be so, only this way and not otherwise. Faith leads to the constancy of the principles of all interactions of something with something. The doubt, and its extreme manifestation, disbelief, is disharmony with something, hesitation, truth, not true, to believe, not to believe, rejection, disagreement, resistance, and finally, complete disbelief and denial. The trial is an action to check something with something. To make sure, to believe or doubt, it is possible or not, it will or will not survive, it is worth it or not, true or not, and so on and so forth. By the qualities of the spirit, from the energy of the senses, the spirit created and creates being, in all the infinite varieties of manifestations and laws. In any spirit, the main thing is the spectrum of the components of the spirit's senses. You understand, of course, that senses' energies are different, good or evil, and the spectrum of its spirit qualities, what it wants, what it strives for, willpower, faith, doubt, the ability to endure trials. Block 2.3,5. And the world was rapidly developing further. And here it is not important meticulously precise definition of the sequence of events in the next row of being. The main thing is important, creation was going on, the construction of the world from what was available. And there were senses emitted equals generated by the spirit, and passing through it, through its parts, the space designated by it. And the energy, is the senses, but with open cycles of oscillations. Sense can, in its power, increase and decrease, and at any moment, at any stage, to pass into a different sense energy. But, the chain of transition, from one sense energy to another, is eternal and indissoluble. For, as already mentioned, if to break this chain of senses absolutely everywhere and completely, even for a fraction of a moment, then consciousness equals awareness of spirit, would completely disappear. And together with it, space and the entire universe. Fortunately, practically, this is impossible. And possessing an energy, the creation is possible. So, energy is an open oscillation equals vibration of a sense, without a specific volume in space. And it is right. After all, when the first feeling arose, nothing had realized that it is nothing, and, therefore, the first work was done, there was no space yet. And the spectral composition of sense, feeling, and its qualities, and the spectrum of their vibrations, determine the properties of the given energy. And the hardness of vibrations, determine the belonging of this energy to the range of being. Of those that we already know, this is belonging to the subtle energies of the subtle world, or belonging to the gross energies of the material world. So, an opportunity arose, to create out of energy. Block 2.3,6. Of course, at the same time, the assistance of the Creator and its constituent parts, the newborn spirits, creators, were also created. Let's call these helpers in the Bible way, the angels. Of course, with the growth of the universe, space equals emptiness and the emergence of stable cycles, firstly, it became possible to consider a sequential series of events, in the light of the number of cycles that occurred during the event. That spawned the time. And secondly, the larger the distances became, the easier it became, not to move along these distances in the usual way, but simply to vibrate with the required cyclic frequency, and immediately appear in the right place. That the world is woven of vibrations, and that infinity is identical to a point, and that all the difference in coordinates between objects is precisely in the set of volume linear vibrations of the object, that is, in their OCF passports, it was written and proved in the first part of the book. It would be strange if angels and other highly developed forces would never use this. Block 2.3,7. But let's back to our universe. So, there was an opportunity to create something out of energy. Even from the school course, we know that apart from an energy, there is matter and field. Field, as a special form of matter. Actually, all fields are different, and a unified theory, a unified definition within the framework of the currently dominant science, is not formulated. From the school course we also know, that elementary material particles have both the properties of material particles and wave properties of energy. Well, since the field is a special form of matter, it means that these properties also refer to the field somehow. Therefore, we will not waste a lot of time on explanations. We have enough knowledge to understand everything at once. Therefore, we will immediately give short and clear definitions. For the definition of energy, see above. The field is a vibration of senses energies that has volume in space, with the outline of boundaries, from specific to endlessly fading, and which requires for own existence a radiating special supporting generating source. The matter equals material particle is a structural stable volume trick independent nonlinear vibration of feelings energies, which has a certain volume in space, with specific certain boundaries, having the ability to change, sometimes under certain influences, and which does not require for its life equals existence, a radiating special supporting generating source. The smallest, or the very first material particle, can be called SVN-BS, which means, primary structural stable volume trick independent nonlinear vibration of energy sense. All properties of the field and matter, as well as energy, determine the spectral composition of the used senses energies and their vibrations, and the code of laws created by the spirit. The main thing to understand and realize is, that changes in the quality of vibrations in terms of the hardness of frequencies, radically change the properties and manifestations of the primary material used, subtle senses energies. It is like the intangible air of gentle morning coolness, transformed by the vibrations of a hurricane and tornado, into terrible destructive forces. That is why, in our matfis range of being, the concepts of matter, energy, and field, that are familiar to us, are so different from the concept of sense, feeling, which we usually use. In the IC range, this difference is much less. Block 2.3,8. In general, it is quite natural and understandable that it is very difficult to abstract away like this at once, that is, to discard all vital accumulated stereotypes, knowledge, beliefs. But you don't have to discard anything. You just need to make the appropriate adjustments. That's all. After all, the described origin of the world can be easily called the Big Bang. Just not thoughtless, but meaningful, organized and thoughtful to the smallest detail. Actually, it could not be otherwise. After all, after an explosion in a warehouse with paper, glue, and paints, the library would not be formed. And those who simply believe that God created everything should understand that, yes, God created everything, but God had to come from somewhere in the beginning. And besides the one primordial God creator, there must be its newborn creators gods. After all, you, believers, would not say that you can pray to the God of some distant galactic nebula, and that it will hear you and help you. And if there is one God for all billions of galaxies, billions of stars and planets, who decides and delves into all the prayers of the endless infinity of those praying, then there will be no time left for the universe. Why and how to do it without helpers? That is why we pray to our earthly God, God, the patron of us, earthlings, the patron, both in this world, matfis range, and in other, subtle world. Well, if someone is simply bursting with ignorance, anger, and hatred, then we'll talk about this later. Block 2.3,9. Now, let's return to our universe. In principle, different material particles have no interest in attracting each other, repelling, interacting and so on. And although all these particles are created by the spirit, but they are created, as not endowed with reason. And for any of their interactions, you still need to create and firmly consolidate the laws by which these particles will behave. But how to do it? With the help of the spectrum of necessary qualities, in modern language, to install in them, into particles, a program of behavior in certain situations, fixing this program in the entire designated space. Which, of course, was done. And the confirmation of this, is the entire universe. Block 2.3,10. And now, in the light of the new theory, let's define what we all face, gravity. So, gravity is the urge to collect, reinforced and maintained by the massive power of the collected. Gravity is a field. Like any field, it requires a supporting source. In this case, it is material mass. The larger is the mass, the larger and more powerful is the gravitational field. The boundaries of the gravitational field have a fading structure that goes into infinity. But, according to the will and intention of the Creator, it was not created by itself. The gravitational field has, as it were, the properties of stretched rubber. If the object approaches a source that supports and radiates this field, then it gets faster and faster, but if it tries to move away from this source, it becomes more and more difficult. And in the place where the force of the source's aspiration to attract is balanced with the object's force of aspiration to leave the source, in this place the source can stay as long as the balance of forces' aspirations would not somehow be disturbed. It is precisely on these properties of the gravitational field that the entire system of universal gravitation rests. And the living energies of the life of planets, stars, galaxies, determine the cycles of their rotation. Because, on the one hand, energy is needed for any rotation, and where to get the energy for rotation, for example, of a planet, except from the planet itself. And on the other hand, the energy, emitted by living systems, have to be transformed into something and spent on something. And all this is simply brought to automatism and perfection. Block 2.3,11. But then the question arises, why do the universe, stars, planets, and satellites need all these rotations at all? Let us analyze the answer using the example of our solar system. Well, firstly, our solar system, and the Sun and the Earth and the Moon, are part of a highly organized, and therefore living and intelligent, universe, not part of a dead graveyard. And any part bears the signs of the whole. This means that our solar system is also alive. And all living things have stable closed cycles of their own internal, equals intrasystemic carrier waves. All of this has already been explained in block 1.9.1. And secondly, these rotations are simply necessary for the very existence of these systems. All planets in the solar system have different masses, volumes, and distances from the Sun. And in order for the Sun being the center of the system and energy exchange complementary and mutually balancing centrifugal and centripetal forces are simply needed, obtained from the rotation of planets of different mass and volume, along their different orbits, with their different speeds around single center, equals the Sun. Without centrifugal and centripetal forces that are mutually equal, the system could not be stable and would collapse. But the spinning of the planets themselves around their axes, the Sun does not seem to need. But the planets need it. Let's say that the Earth does not spin around its axis. On one half of the Earth there is an eternal day and a scorching sun, and on the other half of the Earth there is an eternal night and cold. Is it possible in such a situation on the Earth such the present diversity of biological life and its high organization? Analyze the behavior of the atmosphere, ocean, etc. And you will get an unambiguous answer, no, not possible. For our present earthly life, we need just such a current cycle of the Earth's wrap both around its axis and around the Sun. Now, if there is no biological life on the Moon, at least on its surface, then it is not spinning around its axis. What for? And where to get the energy for this? On other stars, planets, satellites, similar. By the way, a deadly threat not only to diversity, but in general to all biological life on our planet, comes from our present human civilization. If we will not change our behavior, then, according to all the laws of the reasonable universe, we will be liquidated. Block 2.3,12. Equals NicA equals, taking into account everything that has already been said and logically proved earlier, can be considered as a described and logically proved in this section, a unified field theory with a specific formulation of the unifying essence, common for all fields. Section 2.4. Are spheres of the universe. Block 2.4,1. From our human point of view, our universe is infinite, both in its size and in its diversity. Myriads of galaxies, nebulae, pulsars, quasars, black holes. Dark energy, dark matter, antimatter. All new discoveries. All new concepts. And there are no prohibitions for the absolute primordial spirit to create the universes in a volume equal to our elementary particle, or to create an elementary particle in the volume of our universe. There are no prohibitions for the absolute primordial spirit to create the universe, or a region in it, with laws that are opposite to our laws of the universe, or significantly different from them. There are no prohibitions for the absolute primordial spirit, for the purpose of experiment and cognition, to create, in addition to our world, also, the parallel worlds, where events, both with their time, can occur and proceed somewhat differently than in our world. Moreover, to create such worlds, not much is needed. It is enough either to designate other spaces and to place these worlds there, or simply shift all the vibrations and frequencies that make up these worlds in ranges so, that they do not merge and interfere with each other. Many worlds, many spaces, many varieties of development paths, many varieties of laws of the universe. All this is possible. But with one indispensable condition. All this variety of worlds, spaces, laws, ranges, and so on, all of these are parts of the absolute one primordial spirit of the Creator, parts, at least somehow, at least through something, connected to each other. The reasons for the impossibility of an absolute break equals separation were explained above. All this possible diversity of all worlds and spaces, created by the primordial spirit, for a single interpretation and harmonious all-embracing understanding, let's call an absolute of the spirit of the one primordial creator. And so as not to confuse with anything, we will write it like this, A equals SOPC. So, we repeat. All of the above are integral inseparable parts of our one absolute universe, our A equals SOPC. But in order to move into an absolutely primordially originally different A equals SOPC, or at least to contact with it, you have to go through equals penetrate equals create a connection through the nothing, where there is nothing, no space, no directions, no clues for any action, and nothing itself, is not there either. Nothing, is unattainable, like the horizon. Perhaps, in the distant future, this task will also be solved. The path of knowledge is endless. But for now, the question of the possibility of the connection between 2A equals SOPC through the nothing, is not considered by the concept of equals NicA equals. And why do we need this, at the present stage of evolution? We already have enough specific and urgent problems and tasks of survival, and transition to the path of infinite development. That is, harmonization with nature, Mother Earth, the laws of the universe, and the universe as a whole. Block 2.4,2. Based on the knowledge we have gained, a reasonable question may arise. If everything that is present now in the universe is already known by the Spirit, opened, projected, created, and it foresees everything in advance, why then is our path of knowledge needed? Is there any sense in it? We answer. In the infinities of the universe, all the ways of knowledge are also endless. After all, this information, in this place, for this individual, came only now. And there are endless infinities of the information, that has not yet came here. And any changes in information, in any medium, in some way change this medium. And any change in any medium is also a change, albeit small, in the entire universe as a whole. There is a sense in knowledge, and very huge. And our future and the future of the universe as a whole, depend on the quality, path, goals, and results of this knowledge. Further, we will talk more than once about the most important tasks in the earthly life of each person. Block 2.4,3. But now, let's return to our spheres of the universe. The Creator equals nature equals God cosmic intelligence, as you like, created and continues to create the universe. Why continues to create? Just because all of us are the parts of it and we do create something. And, to our great shame, we, so far, destroy and destroy more than create. In the beginning, as it was already explained, the spiritual world was created. Then, as the need grew, for more individualization of separate parts of the primordial spirit and to satisfy their desire for creation, vibrational equals oscillational structures and systems were invented and created. Some of which began to play the role of building material for the implementation of the plans and designs of the spirit, while others became carriers of the individuality of the spirits themselves and an instrument of their impact on other vibrostructures. Of course, in the beginning it was, from our gross material point of view, more subtle energies, more subtle vibrations, a more subtle world, closer to the intangible spiritual structures than to our rough and tough material world which, of course, was created later. But the young spirits, like little children, sooner or later, faced a desire, to destroy something of what they had built, and see what will happen. And just like for the children, in the overwhelming majority of spirits angels, this childhood illness passed very quickly. Proof, our world is not destroyed. And only for the few spirits angels, the passion for destruction remained forever. Proof, ongoing attempts to destroy our world. But before you destroy something, you have to invent it, create a building material, create laws and construction technologies, build, spending energy of feelings, time. Therefore, if we divide the part forces A equals SOPC into divine and devilish, equals satanic, then the dark destructive forces appeared much later than the light creators. Because in the beginning they had nothing to destroy. And one more thing, the essence of the light creative forces is creation, building, improvement, and so on. Therefore, light forces are self-sufficient forces. That means, they can develop independently, without the participation of other forces, to create and to strive for harmony and order. This is their essence. The dark forces, the essence of which is destruction and striving for chaos, are non-self-sufficient forces. They cannot exist independently. They need someone to build objects of destruction. And when there is practically nothing to destroy, they begin to destroy themselves, because this is their essence. Block 2.4,4. Of course, it is quite logical that very soon it became clear, that the dark forces, in their unrestrained essence of destruction, chaos, and other nasty things, pose a direct threat to the structure of the universe and require close control and strict limitation of the field and scope of their activities. But here's the thing. Even the evil spirit, is still a spirit. So, it has immortality. It cannot be destroyed completely. How to completely destroy self-awareness, which has no size, weight, color, or smell, or anything else that could be destroyed? To destroy the carrier, yes, you can. But to destroy the spirit itself, never. But it is possible to change that spirit by changing its qualities, to transform, to connect with another spirit, or even to pour one spirit into another. And you can also shield equals isolate the dark forces so, that they begin, following their essence, to destroy themselves, tending to zero, but they will never reach it. Because, with a decrease in the power of the dark force, the speed and size of its self-destruction, will decrease. This is like in the example with infinitely dividing and decreasing segments. Therefore, as the Creator tells us through the Holy Scriptures and esoteric teachings, the following was done. In the subtle world the dark forces were isolated in a limited space called hell. Probably, these are adequate controlled dark forces, because they even found harmonious application, punishment of sinful souls. The rest of the fallen angels, led by the leader, were thrown down to earth, in our material physical range. Probably, they did the same on some other planets of our mat-physical range. And this is a very correct and wise decision. Because our material world is designed in a such way that pain, suffering and loss will always be present in it, to some extent. But these tests also temper us, strengthen the qualities of our spirit, necessary for its further improvement. The essence, is our improvement, for our further eternal life, as we have said and proved many times, the spirit, is immortal. And we have a freedom of choice, who are we with? Or we, together with the Creator, are building a new bright harmonious future, which is incredibly difficult while living on earth, or, succumbing to temptations, promises, bribery and all sorts of cunning agreements, or any of our own reasons and convictions, we join the ranks of the dark forces, which, unfortunately, at the time of this writing, run the show on earth. But just don't forget that the dark forces are not self-sufficient. And as soon as they have no one to destroy, they will destroy you, their servant and slave. Well, even if you imagine that you are not a slave of the dark forces, but their lord, master, patron, or at least equal to them. As the 1,000-year experience of mankind shows, the dark forces are triggered by their dark essence, and you will be destroyed much earlier than you calculated for yourself, and much more painful, tougher, and more sophisticated than you could imagine. There are a lot of examples. At least, let us remember those who carried out repressions, executions, genocides, famines. Where are they? And what was their end? Well, now let's remember those who slavishly and silently serve the devil, who gave their body and soul, as a carrier for the dark forces. Few have seen, but many have heard how terribly hard and painful is the death of warlocks who have sown a lot of pain and evil in our world, and who, for some reason, did not transfer the dark force sitting in them, to another person, to another body by the time of death. What do? They even tear the roof off, because nothing helps, neither prayer, no anesthesia, no drugs. The evil force, until it is satiated, will not go anywhere and will not let the soul go and will not let it die. Well, who has seen the happy ones possessed by demons, or other spiritually energetic entities, components of the dark forces? There are none. They just don't exist. Cowardice, greed, venality, cruelty, sadism, envy, jealousy, a thirst to rule over the fate of others, to kill, always, sooner or later, but always, leads to adequate results, to retribution and a corresponding end. Block 2.4,5. Evil dark forces cannot be called stupid. On the contrary, they are very creative. and they are trying to delay their end as far as possible. Therefore, they are simply forced sometimes to retreat and hide, so that the light forces could invent, build something, in order to have something to destroy. But their evil and dark essence cannot stand for a long time without the energy of destruction. Therefore, more is destroying than is being built now. And our entire civilization, so far, is stubbornly approaching its end. Not in vain it was said, God is at war with the devil and the battlefield is the human heart. The whole future, specifically depends on each of us. It's good that there are such huge cosmic distances between the planets, and our modern knowledge is limited. Cosmic distances are a natural barrier to the spread of evil. And while we ourselves, on our Earth, do not curb the forces of evil, do not limit them to manageable safe limits, we will not see other planets as own heirs. Maybe in some pavilions and special laboratories, testing grounds, will be created the next film tales about the landing of people on Mars, or somewhere else. And, perhaps, expeditions of voluntary migrants will even be sent out. But, with a one-way ticket, and with their further virtual computer life for those who remained on Earth. You can see for yourself how much lies, suppression, and obviously untrue are around. But propaganda constantly impose it. Often they try to convince us through the media that all extraterrestrial civilizations are much more aggressive than us and simply dream of capturing and enslaving our planet. But how many times the flying saucers have prevented nuclear conflicts from starting? How many times unknown, to us, the broad masses, forces, have not allowed to implement projects that could lead to the imminent death of the entire planet? An example is, the Tesla's death rays. Any dangerous scientific knowledge must correspond to the moral climate of society, its, society's, spiritual maturity, responsibility, and non-conflict. And aliens are not a threat to us. We, with our aggression, greed, irresponsibility, and mountains of deadly weapons and waste, are the headache for aliens, who defeated the forces of evil in their worlds and have put this evil in an acceptable framework. Block 2.4,6. It would be nice, of course, to find somewhere in aliens, being very similar to us. In appearance, biology, form of life. Of course, somewhere there do exist. But somewhere very far away. After all, the world is woven of vibrations. And very similar, or partially identical vibrations, should be at a decent distance from each other, so as not to interfere with each other. It's like two independent radio stations operating on the same wavelength, or very similar waves and being close to each other. They will only drown out each other. Therefore, we must understand and take for granted, that the alien civilizations nearest to us, are significantly different from ours. Well, important is not the appearance, not the form, but the essence. After all, the intelligent and surely extraterrestrial civilization, which is trying to communicate with us by creating figured symbols in our fields, practically did not kill a single spikelet. They simply have changed the structure and shape of their stems. But not a single plant died from this, and the offspring have not lost their properties. This is who we need to take an example from. Here's someone to learn from. Here is someone to be friends with. Block 2.4,7. So, let us list once again the spheres of the universe, already known to us, dividing them by the classes, common unifying properties. 1 class, spheres of indicated nothing, spheres of spaces. This is our world space in which our entire universe is located. In addition to our world space, as we have already explained, there can be other spaces that are in our A equals SSPC, absolute equals spirit single primordial creative. 2 class, spheres of frequency ranges, IC range, range of intangible concepts, SW range, range of the subtle world, MP range, our material physical range. It is also our material physical world, in which we live. Here we can also add the emerging new range of the virtual world. So far, this range is completely dependent on us, and is practically part of our MP range. But who knows what would happen next? 3 class, spheres of the basic spiritual forces. These are the forces of light and forces of darkness. Different spectra of interactions and interpenetration of all these spheres, give rise to different spectra of realities. Block 2.4,8. And finally, let us sum up the general formula of the universe. The principle of the structure of our universe. Our universe is the information wave structures of feelings, in the space indicated by the spirit, created by the spirit, living in the spirit, according to its, spirit's, laws. And as for the eternal philosophical question, what appeared first, a chicken or an egg? You can answer like this: earlier, equals at first, an idea appeared, equals a plan. Then, a figurative project and its intended place and role in the universe. Then a chicken spirit appeared, and an embryo that has characteristics and properties of both chicken and egg, which began to develop into a chicken and egg. Actually, in this philosophical question, it is not just the chicken and the egg that are important, but the very principle of origin. We have already described this principle. As for chickens and eggs specifically, it is unlikely that the Creator would bother with one egg or chicken. It is more logical to say that it immediately created a population with chickens, roosters, and eggs. Let the chickens incubate the babies, and the roosters do their job. Let us do our main things too. Let's improve, strengthen, our spirit. Improving ourselves, to improve the world around us. Fight against evil, saving the nurse Mother Earth from all entrenched evil spirits, stuck everywhere, including our own souls. As the classic said, we will seed what is reasonable, kind, eternal. And we will be worthy successors equals heirs equals representatives of our native planet Earth. End of the part 2 of equals NicA equals.